Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FERM Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you. This week, it's another solo one in my room, but it's alright because everything's good. If you're just listening, you can tune in and watch. If you're just watching, you can tune in and listen. Audio platforms, youtube.com/at FERM Podcast. Today, it's another one of those. If you're just listening, you're not. Excuse me. You're not missing too much watching because I'm just in my setup of computer desk live stream situation. It's been one of those weeks where we just have. It was a busy weekend. Didn't get to squeeze in a taping of this here program with my boy Rockstar Life, one word, three eyes. So it's just me, and this time I'm not gonna sulk in my depression or anything like that. But I feel like I've thought up some interesting things to talk about that I can kind of riff off my own. And I have the great and powerful ChatGPT podcast pal to back me up if I need it. But the topic of this solo conversation is the importance of perspective in music, in life in general. That's a thing. But for the purpose of this discussion, music, because I just came off of live streaming Upcoming Artist Radio, the thing I've been doing for like a year and a half that's kind of been going pretty well. And all the just different things, it just gets me thinking, and I write down ideas for classic YouTube video type things, but this is podcast, so not the same, but I feel like this is a good space to just freely, talk about it. And there's two basic premises of, that's the other background context. I also just came up, if you're not in the universe of what I'm mainly known for, quote unquote, online, in my microcosm of internet action, is the listening to people's music and then picking my favorites from the week and blah blah. And then I finally did my yearly yearly recap, picking favorites out of the top threes from all the weeks, 48 weeks out of the 52 of the year that I've streamed last year, picking the favorite, my pre-favorites from the top threes, putting them into three categories, 10 each into three different genres. And then I picked 10 ultimately, which was a hard choice in and of itself. And then I had people vote on it, so that was an interesting outcome. And then those artists sent the link to their fans so they can vote on them. So it's interesting dynamic of the how many people you can drum up. Excuse me, I just ate a bunch of food. Bad idea, but I had to. And I started to think about the way that songs get to me, the way they affect me, and why I pick them as my favorites. And I'm always I like to over-explain myself or feel the need to be understood. I have that issue where if I feel like someone doesn't get, even if they don't ask, like when I do the live streams a lot, and I'm probably doing it now as I record this podcast, I always feel the need to explain the way I think and the way I behave as much as possible. Some kind of psychological thing, I guess. But that's a topic for another discussion. And so the way I pick the things and all that, and so it gets me thinking, like, in my scientist brain, I'm like, okay, what are the metrics, like because it's a psychological thing, and ultimately it's like feelings about the music that you can't really, you just can't measure them until we get some kind of super advanced way to connect, like neurological physics, quantum neurology, something like that, to really understand the response that a human gets from a song or any type of art, any type of stuff like that, that's everyone kind of views, that's very subjective in that way. What, if any, can I apply to explain why I like the things I like, and just have like a, not a rubric, kind of like a rubric, but like a at least a general formation of like what are the things that are making me like. Okay, so let me get, before I just try to, yeah. So the two main things that I started thinking of are the one, the degree of impression, the degree of impression. So like how much something impresses you. It's like you see somebody like playing the guitar in a way you've never seen before. They're like shredding or just something, and you don't play guitar maybe, and you see like, whoa, that's fucking impressive. That guy's moving his fingers crazy. This sounds awesome. That guy's dope. But it doesn't really, it's just and then that's just it. It's just like you're impressed. There's that aspect, and then there's the other main aspect of the two that I narrowed down, and that's the emotional connection. And that's the hardest part to really measure and articulate. But it's that response of how, like, this is moving me emotionally in a way I can't explain, or maybe you can explain it, but it's just, it hits you some way in like this very profound way where you feel drawn to it in the music. And then so that there's those two things that and then so as I'm thinking all about this as I'm doing the 2023 favorites, and afterwards was like just thinking about what like why, if I had to explain this to somebody, how would I explain it? And it's an interesting kind of philosophical concept, because you can have they're not mutually exclusive, but they can also overlap, and is that what mutually exclusive? Anyway, because you can, so within the emotional part, lyrics of a song can have a lot to do with that as well, but you also don't necessarily need lyrics. Just like simple melodic patterns or chord structures elicit a specific response in your brain, or it's linked back to a memory when you first heard it, all those kinds of things. And then, and then it just hits you like that. And then on top of that, also the lyrics, you can hear the lyrics, and it like resonates with an emotional experience you've had before, or you're actively having, which is even more potent. Like the simplest, the love song. I mean, there's a reason why people have that love songs are always very commonly the most popular hits of any given era, is because it's so relatable. Everyone has some kind of love experience that they can relate to. So there's that lyrics aspect where it's like, oh my God, I feel this so much, this resonates with me, and then combined with that musical attraction of sound where it comforts you, and you're attracted to it. So I think that's the most, that's definitely the most meaningful part of it, which is why in the FERM phase, I generally hold that the most, how I give it the most weight. And then the degree of impression is more of like the added thing. But they both work together. So when something really impresses me, where someone's like, in this world, it's a lot of rap, it's a lot of hip hop, that kind of thing. Not as much like real instrumentation, like people playing instruments. So the degree of impression usually comes from somebody singing really well or rapping really well. The flow is like wild, and they're fat. They're really fast rappers, high tempo, high speed, whatever. And it'll be like, whoa, this is impressive that you're making this sound with your mouth. There's that, and then there's this is really making me feel drawn to it, or I really relate to what the energy, the emotional, what the singer, the rapper is, what the vocalist is, what their own emotional, whatever it is, turmoil, happiness, whatever feelings they're projecting out of their mouth, and it infuses into their words and the tone of their voice, and then if you receive it in this way, if you're on that kind of similar wavelength, it'll really hit you. And I think that's like a really important factor in determining, well, what's my favorite song, what's my favorite this one. And I have a hard time choosing individual favorites, notoriously, and always have, and I don't think that'll ever change. Maybe as I get older, that tends to be a trend amongst people, that the more older people get, the less open-minded they are to music. But I believe certain practices could keep that from happening. So I was thinking about that. I thought that was an interesting subject. This won't be a super long episode, because this is pretty much all I want to talk about, and I have nobody else. I guess we can bring in ChatGPT here and see what she says about my thoughts, and maybe she can give me some insights. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else that if only I had when they get the technology to just transcribe all your thoughts, when you can like, all right, I'm thinking really hard right now. Hey, Google, I'm not going to say it so my phone doesn't bug out. Start transcribing my thoughts. Okay. And then you just go on a thinking tirade, which I do all the time. And then instead of having to write it down, you can just think and then go back and like, oh yeah, here's you thinking your exact thoughts about all these things. That'd be great, because I have a lot of those. So I'm trying. There's definitely like a lot of other things that went along with that. And I didn't write them down because I didn't expect to do this, and it's just on a whim. But I guess I covered mostly the emotional connection, and then the degree of impression is just like, I mean, that alone can make it a favorite, because it's all relative. If you haven't seen it or heard it done before, it's impressive, so you're drawn to it. But when they combine the emotional connection, resonance, and the impressiveness, that's when you really get a super fan. When somebody feels both of those, can sense both of those things. And it's interesting to note the degree of impression is definitely relative, because if you've literally taken the time to listen to like every piece of music any person of note has ever put out, or not of note, there's little things you're going to be impressed by, because unless you're constantly listening to new things and you've heard everything, the amount of impression the bar is gonna be raised more and more. So that's completely relative. But the emotional connection thing that's why I feel like it's more important. It holds more weight because there's nothing. There's some kind of relativity, but it's not really. It's constantly changing, not from the object as the impression can be. Like people can get better and more intricate and innovative with flows and stuff, but your own emotions will change from day to day, hour to hour, month to month, yada yada, depending on what's going on in your life. And then you can go back listen to something from the 60s and connect to it way more than you could to something now, and then vice versa. So I think that's the two very interesting topics that go the two most, what I'll call the main metrics of what makes what makes a song or a band or whatever somebody's favorite, is that the level of impression and the emotional connection. Level of impression may be more toward a musician's perspective, because I guess if you're not a musical person whatsoever, but you're just a consumer of music, most people, there's not many people that aren't consumers of music, but a lot of, I don't know, I'd wonder, maybe 50%. It's probably growing by now because a lot of people are grabbing onto music since it's so accessible to make, but I would wager at least half of the people that are music consumers aren't musically inclined or musically doing some kind of musical endeavor themselves. So they're usually impressed by default if it sounds good, because they don't have any perspective of trying it, so they're just like, whoa, you can do that, that's cool, I can't. So yeah, that emotional connection, I think it's just the most important. That's why I always say at the beginning of my FERM faves and all those recaps, this is all based on my degree of impression, emotional resonance, taste. That's another thing I didn't really think of, but taste kind of goes into, actually, it is kind of a third. I guess that it's like a whatever. I don't know if genetics would play into it necessarily, but it's environment, how you were brought up and what you're used to hearing. But then again, I like hearing things that I've never heard before. So yeah, there maybe taste. Maybe I need to work that theory out a little more. Add the third aspect, the personal taste. What is taste? How does that develop? Like, why do you like a specific thing more than the other based on its sound profile? I didn't really think about that as much as I did just now. Very interesting. Well, we're nearing 20 minutes here. I'm gonna ask Podcast Pal. I'm gonna kind of give it the overview and see what it says about. See if it like validates my my ideas here. Hi, Podcast Pal. I was just talking about the two, what I think are the fundamental metrics by which you measure what your favorite music is, and that is degree of impression and emotional connection. How do you feel about that conclusion?
Hey there, I think you're onto something pretty cool with those metrics for measuring your favorite music. The degree of impression and emotional connection really do seem like fundamental aspects when it comes to enjoying music. The degree of impression can be all about how a piece of music leaves a mark on you, right? It could be the way a melody hooks into your brain, or how a particular rhythm just makes you want to move. It's that unforgettable aspect of music that makes a song or piece stand out among the rest. On the flip side, emotional connection dives deep into how music resonates with your feelings and experiences. It's like when a song perfectly captures what you're going through, or brings back vivid memories, making it incredibly special and meaningful to you. Both of these aspects create a rich tapestry of personal musical preferences and experiences. They show how music isn't just about sound, it's about the stories, feelings, and memories we attach to those sounds. What do you think? Do these metrics resonate with how you connect with your favorite tunes?
I can't wait till this they can get the technology up to where I feel like I'm talking to a real person. But so it kind of took degree. So yeah, degree of impression, like the impression it leaves upon you. That's not the semantics there are a little confusing. What I mean by degree of impression is like if you're surprised or impressed. That's just what we say to by something that makes you. It's like a wow factor kind of thing. That she was interpreting it more of like just how it sinks into you, and then captures the emotional connection part. Well, so I don't want to clarify that because I don't want this to go on too much longer. But I do want to ask about the taste. That's what I'm really interested in, because I just discovered this as right here on the podcast about my third metric that I'm inventing. I'm going to ask it the question here. Let's see. I have a third potential metric, and I'm not sure how to explain it, and that is personal taste. Where do you think musical taste comes from, as in particular sounds that you like to hear, chord progressions, things like that? Is it environmental or is it in your genetics?
Personal taste in music. That's a fascinating and complex dimension. When it comes to where our musical preferences stem from, it's like a dance between nature and nurture, with both genetic and environmental factors playing their parts. On the genetic side, there's some evidence suggesting that our basic predispositions towards certain types of sounds or music could be influenced by genetics. This might include a natural inclination towards rhythm or a sensitivity to certain frequencies that can make some types of music more appealing than others. However, the environmental influences are huge. Cultural background, the music you were exposed to growing up, the social groups you're part of, and even personal experiences can deeply shape your musical taste. For example, a chord progression might remind you of a significant event in your life, or a particular instrument's sound could be tied to your cultural heritage, making those elements more appealing to you. Personal taste can also evolve over time as you're exposed to new sounds, genres, and experiences. It's like your musical palette expands and changes as you explore and interact with the world around you. In a way, musical taste is like a personal soundtrack that's continuously being written by the interplay of your genetic makeup and the rich tapestry of your life experiences. What do you think? Do you see your musical preferences as a reflection of your environment, your genetics, or a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. I'm not going to ask it any more questions, but basically that just summed up my what I was pondering on there, just expounded upon it. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely the third, the musical taste factor is certainly something I should incorporate into my theory. But it's getting late. This is kind of a last minute thing, but hope you enjoyed listening as I develop this theory of musical attraction. And I want to make like a proper YouTube video about this at some point, but for now it's in podcast form, open solo discussion. And next week, hopefully, I think I'll be able to get with Rockstar Life and do a duo episode again. Either way, have a good one. See you next time. Hit the like button, comment, rate, and review. And if you're still listening to me talk, thank you so much. Bless your soul in the heavens and on earth. In Jesus' name, amen. Praise Allah. Yeshua.